It's 95 degrees out, you drop into a seat that's been baking all afternoon, and you reach over and crank the air conditioning to full blast. A minute later, cold air is pouring from the vents, and the car feels livable again. The strange thing is what's actually happening under the hood while that cold air blows. That machine down there is not making cold air. There is no cold being manufactured anywhere in your car. What it's really doing is grabbing the heat out of the cabin and hauling it outside, and it pulls the very same trick your kitchen refrigerator runs every single day. So if your car's AC isn't a cold machine, what is it? It's really just a heat mover. Picture the whole system as a pump whose only job is to pick up heat from inside the car and carry it out front where it's released into the outside air. Cold, the way you and I feel it, is only what's left over once the heat is gone. Your fridge works this exact way. That's why the back of it feels warm, because that warmth is the heat it pulled out of the food and dumped into your kitchen. A car air conditioner is that same machine shrunk down and bolted onto your engine. And here's the one piece almost every explainer leaves out, the thing that actually makes the cold happen. It comes down to a liquid boiling. When any liquid turns into a gas, it drinks up a huge amount of heat doing it. You already know this feeling. Wipe a little rubbing alcohol across your arm and it goes cold, because that liquid is evaporating and stealing heat from your skin as it lifts off. Sweat cools you the same way. That right there is the whole secret of your air conditioner. The system carries a special liquid called refrigerant, and it forces that refrigerant to boil into a gas in one exact spot, right behind your dashboard, so it sucks the heat straight out of the air blowing past it. Then it squeezes the gas back into a liquid somewhere else so it can throw that heat away and start over. The boiling is what pulls the heat in, and the squeeze is what pushes it back out. That constant back and forth is the entire machine. Let me walk you around that loop, because there are really only 5 parts, and once you see the order they go in, the whole thing clicks into place. It starts at the compressor. This is the workhorse, a pump bolted to the side of your engine. It grabs the refrigerant as a cool, low-pressure gas and squeezes it hard into a hot, high-pressure gas. Squeezing any gas heats it up, so the refrigerant leaves the compressor genuinely hot, hotter than the summer air outside. That matters for the very next step. From there, the hot gas travels up to the condenser, which sits at the front of your car, ahead of the radiator, behind the grill. It looks like a small radiator itself. Outside air blows through it while you drive, and a fan pushes air through it when you're stopped. Because the refrigerant is now hotter than that outside air, its heat flows out into the passing air, and the gas cools and turns back into a liquid. That is your car quietly chucking the cabin's heat out the front end. First half of the trick, done. Next, that liquid passes through a little canister called the receiver dryer, or on some cars, an accumulator. It's a dull part, but it earns its keep. A drying agent inside pulls any stray moisture out of the system, because water in there would freeze into ice crystals and tear up components. Then the liquid keeps moving. Now comes the part that sets up the cold, the expansion valve. On some cars, it's a fixed pinhole called an orifice tube instead, but it's the same idea, it's just a tiny restriction. High-pressure liquid gets forced through this narrow opening into a wide-open low-pressure space on the other side, and the instant that pressure drops, the liquid is primed to boil at a shockingly low temperature. And boil it does, in the 5th and final part, the evaporator. This is the one piece of the whole system that rides inside the cabin with you, tucked up behind your dashboard. It's another little radiator-looking coil, and it's freezing cold because the refrigerant inside it is boiling. Your blower fan pushes warm cabin air across it. The boiling refrigerant drinks the heat right out of that air, and what comes out the vents is cold and dry. Then the refrigerant, a gas once again, heads back to the compressor, and the whole lap begins over, many times a minute, the entire time your air conditioning is on. Now here's what makes a car's AC different from the one in your house, and it's the thing that explains most of the odd stuff you notice. That compressor doesn't run on electricity from a wall. It runs off your engine, spun by the same belt that drives everything else up there. There's an electric clutch on it, and when you press the AC button, the clutch grabs hold and the compressor starts pumping. When you turn it off, or when the system has cooled the cabin enough, the clutch lets go and the compressor just coasts. That clicking on and off is completely normal, by the way. A lot of people hear the compressor cycle and assume it's on its way out. It isn't dying at all. It's the system regulating itself, kicking the pump on and off to hold your temperature and to stop that evaporator coil from freezing into a block of ice. Rapid clicking every couple of seconds is a different story and usually means the system is low, but a slow, steady cycle is just the machine doing its job. Running off the engine also means the AC costs you fuel. It's a real drag on the motor, and depending on your car and how hot it is, running the air conditioning can knock your gas mileage down somewhere around 5 to 25%, worst of all in slow, stop-and-go city driving. On the highway, the hit is a lot smaller. That's the trade for not roasting alive. Here's a pattern you've almost certainly felt yourself. The AC is blowing ice cold while you're cruising down the highway. Then you pull up to a long red light on a brutal day, and the air creeping out of the vents slowly goes lukewarm. Start moving again, and it's cold once more. That one baffles everybody, and it traces straight back to the condenser out front, the part whose whole job is dumping heat. At highway speed, air is ramming through the grill and flooding that condenser, so the heat sheds easily. Sitting at a light, that free airflow is gone, and the entire job falls on one electric fan. If that fan is weak or dead, or the condenser is clogged with baked-on bugs and road film, it can't shed the heat fast enough at a standstill, and your vents go warm. So warm at idle, but cold on the move almost always points at condenser airflow, a tired fan or a filthy condenser before anything else. Now for the question that trips up almost everybody. When the AC quits blowing cold, the reflex is to say it needs a recharge, as if the refrigerant slowly ran down and you just pour more in. But refrigerant is not a consumable. That sealed loop is built to hold the same charge for the entire life of the car and never lose a drop. So a system that's low has a leak, plain and physical, usually a dried out O-ring, a tired seal, or a stone-chipped part weeping refrigerant out little by little. Pour a fresh charge in without finding that leak, and you've bought maybe a few weeks of cold before it seeps back out. I've watched people go through this every single summer, refilling instead of fixing, when the leak was the actual repair the whole time. And that old word freon you hear tossed around, that's just a brand name. Older cars run a refrigerant called R134A, and newer ones, roughly 2021 and up, use a pricier one called R1234YF, which is a big reason a recharge on a newer car stings more at the shop. A few quick things people always wonder about. That recirculate button, the one with the arrow curling around inside a little car. When it's on, the system stops pulling in hot outside air and just recools the air already in the cabin, which cools you faster and works the compressor less, so flip it on the moment you climb in. Switch back to fresh air if your windows start fogging, because outside air clears fog better. Then there's the puddle under your car after you park on a hot day, which is completely normal. That's just the humidity from the cabin air condensing on that cold evaporator coil and draining out a tube beneath the car, the same way a cold glass of iced tea sweats on a table. And if one side of the car blows warm while the other blows cold, that's usually not a refrigerant problem at all. Behind the dash there are little doors that blend in heat, and when one of those blend door actuators sticks, you get that split down the middle. And if you're driving an electric car, the physics is identical, with one change. There's no engine belt to spin the compressor, so an electric motor runs it instead, straight off the big battery. Same loop, same boiling and squeezing, just powered differently. The upside is it can cool the cabin before you even get in. The catch is that heavy AC use pulls real energy from that battery, so on a hot day it quietly eats into your driving range. One genuinely useful thing to take away from all this: if your AC feels weak but nothing is truly broken, the cheapest fix most people never think of is a good cleaning. That condenser up front collects a summer's worth of bugs, pollen, and leaves that choke off its airflow, and a gentle rinse can bring your cooling right back. Same story with your cabin air filter, tucked behind the glove box on most cars, which clogs up and strangles the airflow to your vents. They're both cheap, and almost nobody thinks to check them, so I've dropped a cabin filter and a coil cleaner in the description if you want to knock this out in your driveway. The one part one would genuinely dread is the evaporator, that coil buried behind the dash. The part itself is cheap, but reaching it is brutal, because on many cars a shop has to pull the entire dashboard to get to it, and that labor is where a four-figure repair bill comes from. And that is really all a car air conditioner is. A sealed loop of refrigerant boiling in one place to soak up your cabin's heat and getting squeezed in another to fling that heat back out the front, running off your engine the whole time. The cold coming out of your vents is just heat that already left the building. Picture that loop turning, and the warm air at the stoplight, the little puddle on the driveway, the click of the compressor kicking in. All of it turns from random car weirdness into the same machine doing precisely the job it was built for.